Our story begins on the continent of Gaia. Many years ago, a peculiar phenomenon began to occur. Monsters are disappearing. Initially, it was believed that they were becoming extinct, but after an investigation, it was discovered that this was not the case. All the monsters have been transported to another dimension. Interdimensional travel is a long-held aspiration of wizards, and even if the narrator doesn't know the exact reason why this phenomenon is occurring, it doesn't matter, because it has helped him a lot in his research. We then see this magician trying to perform an interdimensional travel spell. Standing in the magic circle, he raises both arms towards the ceiling, finalizing the ritual he has prepared over a long period of time. He uses the Dungel, the Great Labyrinth, as a powerful source of energy. With the mana in that place, crossing dimensions didn't seem to be a problem. When he casts the spell, a great flash appears and a pillar of light can be seen on the horizon. The wizard feels the airflow and the temperature change, indicating that the journey was a success. However, when he looks around, he sees only a huge crater around him. The interdimensional journey didn't happen to him, but to the dungeon itself. In another scene, we see a boy in his room, frightened, watching a large portal that has appeared out of nowhere. He wonders what's going on. The next morning, in a quiet town, people are going to school and work. Among them is Kong Jinhyuk, a D-rank hunter, who reflects on how nice it would be if he could concentrate on something he was passionate about. He thinks that the luxuries of life are no longer possible for him. Suddenly, someone calls out to Jinhyuk, hurrying him along as the work they are doing is only half done. When they finish, the person compliments Jinhyuk's performance and comments that he doesn't seem to feel cold. Jinhyuk replies that, as a hunter, he is resistant to the cold, surprising the other man. The man then asks why a hunter is doing part-time work. Jinhyuk replies that it's simple, he needs money. The other man comments that it would be great if the guilds stopped monopolizing everything. Jinhyuk bitterly agrees, mentioning that mercenaries would never do that, and that the situation has gotten worse lately. They then start arguing about a recent series of murders of hunters from major guilds by a serial killer. This had caused the guilds to take out their frustration on ordinary people. Just then, a loud noise interrupts them. Jinhyuk gets out of the car, and his companion asks what he's doing. Jinhyuk, upon hearing the sound, recognizes that it is someone being attacked, possibly by terrorists or monsters. As he runs in the direction of the sound, he realizes that it is monsters, seeing people fleeing in panic. For Jinhyuk, this is his chance to show his power. He opens his inventory and takes out his weapon, a metal baseball bat. His friend offers to help, but Jinhyuk explains that only hunters can hurt monsters, and that he should stay behind. Determined, Jinhyuk prepares to face the monsters before the guilds show up. He sees this as an opportunity to make money, but is interrupted by another hunter, who sends him away. This hunter is the deputy master of the Titan Guild, responsible for that area. Jinhyuk tries to argue, saying that he arrived first, but the deputy master declares that the territory belongs to the guild. Jinhyuk, annoyed, tries to tackle him, but the vice master is much faster and easily knocks him down. He warns Jinhyuk that if he tries anything again, he will be killed. Jinhyuk realizes the huge difference in power between a D-rank hunter and a deputy guild master. Frustrated by the tyranny of the guilds, he just resigns himself to continuing his next part-time job, because at the end of the day, he's just a D-rank hunter with no power or influence. When Kong Jinhyuk finished that part-time job, he returned home reflecting on many things. He even had a dark thought, wishing that the serial killer would kill the members of the Titan Guild. However, the strongest feeling he experienced was weakness and defeat in the depths of his soul. Sitting there, he thought that that slap was still hurting until he suddenly heard a noise in his house. We then return to the scene at the beginning of the story, when he sees that large portal. He takes a look and realizes that something is inside. As he gets closer, he sees a goblin. Startled, Jinhyuk falls to the ground and thinks he needs to find his weapon. However, it seems that the portal is like glass and the goblins can't see him. Confused, he wonders why they can't see him. When he touches the portal, he notices that there is no resistance or any strange reaction. It seems that a dungeon has appeared in his room. He stops for a moment to drink some water and ponders whether his suspicions are correct. Dungeons of this kind have always been just a concept, but now one has appeared in his attic. Jinhyuk ponders whether to report it to the association or simply leave it as it is. Dungeons have always been discussed, but none have really been discovered. If he reported it, the association would surely kick him out, and he would never see that dungeon again. He has now made his decision. Instead of handing over this gold mine to the association, he will keep it for himself. But he still needs to check if the monsters can get out. In the next scene, we see Jin-hyuk armed and ready to test the portal. He thinks that, with his skills, he can take on 2 or 3 goblins at most, but if more monsters appear, he could die in there. Bravely, he enters the dungeon, the Goblin Labyrinth. Soon, a goblin appears and spots him. Jin-hyuk tries to attack it, but dodges it and runs back to the portal, hoping that the goblin doesn't see him. Fortunately, the goblin gets lost and starts attacking the wind. Jin-hyuk realizes that, in fact, the monsters can't get out of the dungeon. With more confidence, he strikes the goblin with his staff, hitting him repeatedly until he kills him. The goblin, with a look of fear, makes Jin-hyuk think, "Don't look at me like that, I'm desperate too." He finishes the goblin off with a powerful blow to the head. As a hunter, it was the first time he had killed a monster alone, without sharing the experience with anyone. After 3 years without leveling up, Jin-hyuk finally evolved. He realized how oppressive and aggressive the control of the big guilds is. Jin-hyuk then remembers that goblin corpses sell for a high price. A whole goblin can be worth up to 3 million, and he wonders how much this particular one might fetch. In the next scene, he is at the association trying to sell the corpse. The appraiser takes a look at the body and comments that Jin-hyuk doesn't seem to have much hunting experience. Jin-hyuk confirms this and asks how the appraiser knew this. He explains that Jin-hyuk butchered the body before killing the goblin, and that it would be more profitable if he aimed for the vital points next time. The body would be worth 3 million at most. Jin-hyuk accepts the offer without hesitation. The appraiser says that the payment will be transferred shortly, but first he needs to know where Jin-hyuk found the goblin. Jin-hyuk hesitates because he doesn't know if he should tell the truth. The appraiser explains that, by law, they need this information. Jin-hyuk ponders whether he should lie and say that he found it in the Titan Guild's territory, but the appraiser insists that he shouldn't hesitate, as he won't find a better price elsewhere. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the association changes. Someone comes in shouting, and people start muttering that members of the Black Dragon Guild, known troublemakers, are nearby. They seem to be looking for someone. The assessor comments that it's about time they showed up. Soon, the guild members approach, asking if it was the appraiser who took the monster from their hunting area. The appraiser denies it, saying that the person responsible is at the end of the corridor. They then approach a blonde man and, just like that, hit him with a powerful punch. Blondie's friend wonders what the guys from the Black Dragon Guild are up to. One of the guild members tells him that it's illegal to take monster bodies from other guilds' hunting grounds and warns him not to interfere, because that's better than getting arrested. While Blondie is already beaten up, what seemed to be the team leader asks why he was in their area. He wonders if Blondie was trying to kill someone in the guild, since a hunter-killer has recently been on the loose. Blondie, drained of strength, can barely answer. After a while, they drag him out. The assessor, observing the situation, comments that the blonde man should have just taken the money and left without making up lame excuses. He then advises Jin-hyuk to stay away from the guild's hunting grounds if he doesn't want to end up the same way. Jin-hyuk, curious, asks how the guild tracked down Blondie. The evaluator explains that the big guilds have a server to record everything and that the bigger guilds have access to it. Jin-hyuk asks if Blondie, even knowing this, has admitted that he caught the monster in a guild area. The evaluator replies that if he lies about the area where he found the monster, he will be arrested and lose his hunter's license. Jin-hyuk breathes a sigh of relief, thinking that he had narrowly missed lying about the area. He decides not to sell the goblin's body there, despite the appraiser's insistence. Jin-hyuk replies that he simply changed his mind. He reflects that the beaten blonde could have been him and concludes that, if he wants to avoid this kind of situation, he needs to get stronger. Determinedly, Jin-hyuk decides to use his personal dungeon to strengthen himself. When he returns home, he prepares himself properly before re-entering the dungeon. He thinks he's all set, but decides to take a return stone with him, which allows him to escape safely. Even though it cost 1 million, he wonders when he'll really need to use it. He also bought a radar compass that cost 400,000, but it only detects monsters at a distance of 50 meters, which makes it almost useless. However, for someone exploring a dungeon alone, this tool is like having an extra life. In the next scene, Jin-hyuk is already killing more goblins. He progresses to level 5 by killing the second goblin, and by eliminating a few more, he rises to level 8, 9, and so on. He realizes that the name of the dungeon, goblin labyrinth is no exaggeration. All the monsters there are goblins. Although repetitive for someone of his level, it's the perfect hunting ground. After a water break, Jin-hyuk wonders how many levels he has progressed. When he checks his status window, he realizes that he has risen a lot, but his attributes are still low. He doesn't think this is a problem, as he can continue evolving inside the dungeon. While storing the goblins' bodies in his inventory, Jin-hyuk realizes that he has already stored 19 bodies and that the limit is 20. With only one space left, he decides that he needs to get something bigger, something really worthwhile. Using his radar, he detects something approaching from 3 meters away and prepares to ambush what he believes to be a goblin. When he sees a helmet, he attacks, but the only thing he takes off is the helmet. Confused, Jin-hyuk realizes that what he attacked was not a goblin, but a human. He asks the man if he's all right, but in response, the man starts swearing at him in a strange language. Jin-hyuk is puzzled, wondering if he is a foreigner, as the language doesn't seem to belong to any known country. Even so, Jin-hyuk apologizes in the universal language and bows, explaining that he was waiting for a goblin. The man then throws him a necklace, and Jin-hyuk wonders why. As he puts the necklace on, a spell is activated, and Jin-hyuk realizes that he can now understand what the man is saying. The necklace is a translation item, and the man gave it to him just to curse him properly. Even though he tries to argue, the man is furious, and Jin-hyuk just apologizes. The man, who turns out to be a 132-year-old dwarf, curses Jin-hyuk again, saying that he has never seen a brat as young as him. Jin-hyuk, surprised, thinks, "Wait a minute, a dwarf?" He reflects that dwarves only exist in fictional works and are known as a race of blacksmiths. After all, it's not hard to imagine that they would be exactly like that. As the dwarf walks away, Jin-hyuk notices that he has dropped some things, one of which seems to be a very rare dagger. The dwarf, furious, starts swearing at Jin-hyuk, demanding that he return the item. Jin-hyuk quickly returns it, thinking that, even if he wasn't a dwarf, anyone who uses this kind of item must be of a very high level, and it would be better not to mess with him. Jin-hyuk helps the dwarf collect everything and put it in the bag, until the dwarf looks at Jin-hyuk's baseball bat and asks where he got it. Jin-hyuk, confused, asks why, and the dwarf explains that the bat is made of orichalco. To Jin-hyuk, the bat was only made of aluminum, a common metal on Earth, but the dwarf insists that no amount of money could buy something made of orichalco. The dwarf then invites Jin-hyuk to his workshop to handle the metal. Jin-hyuk initially refuses to trade his staff for anything, but the dwarf offers to make a rare item for him. Curious, Jin-hyuk decides to check out the workshop and realizes that the place is full of rare items, which makes him wonder why the dwarf would have a workshop inside a dungeon. While he waits, he ponders whether he should get a weapon or not. Finally, the dwarf finishes and leaves, telling Jin-hyuk to stop being distracted and pick up what he's done. Compared to this, everything else is garbage. Jin-hyuk notices that the stick has turned bright red, and the dwarf explains that this is the specialty of orichalco. Normally, it is a soft and fragile metal, but when enchanted, it becomes strong and resistant. Jin-hyuk, surprised, thinks, "My weapon is enchanted now?" Enchanted weapons are very rare items, usually dropped by high-level monsters. Jin-hyuk barely recognizes his own club, which now looks completely different, and he never imagined that it could be made artificially. He has just met a very skilled dwarf blacksmith, and it seems that the dungeoneering is finally bringing him luck. When he checks the weapon's datasheet, he sees that the durability is S, and thinks he could make a fortune selling it, but refuses, as this would arouse suspicion. Jin-hyuk then asks the dwarf what the weapon's automatic recovery system means. The dwarf explains that the weapon is linked to him and that no one else can use it. Jin-hyuk thinks he won't be able to profit from selling the item, but is satisfied with the answer and keeps the item in his inventory. He now has another problem, finding a place to sell the goblins' bodies. He remembers that the association would not be a good option, as it could attract suspicion. Jin-hyuk then thinks of the black market, where hunters can sell corpses without being questioned. It's easy to get in touch with them, as they always hand out business cards to lower-level hunters who need money. Jin-hyuk arrives at a secluded spot and thinks, "This is the place." Suddenly, someone calls him, confirming his identity and saying that the boss is waiting for him. Jin-hyuk thinks it's great to find a place like this. The head of the black market, Jun-chu, asks to see the condition of the goblins. He is an undercover agent who is currently trading monster corpses on the black market. Jin-hyuk opens his inventory and places the 20 goblin bodies on the ground. The chief's assistant is impressed by the condition of the bodies and tells the chief that they are in good condition. The chief, however, wonders if this is really possible, since Jin-hyuk seems to be a novice. He realizes that the goblins' bodies are in a much better condition than he expected. Jin-hyuk then asks if the 20 bodies can be sold, and the boss confirms, but asks how much he expects to get for them. Jin-hyuk asks for 5 million for each goblin, including the magic stones. The boss, however, points out that the goblins' heads are a bit dented and offers 3 million for each one. Even the boss's assistant turns against him, saying, "For God's sake, 3 million? They're not for decoration." The assistant then asks Jin-hyuk, "So, how much do you think you should get?" The black market boss is confused and wonders why he brought the assistant with him. Then he suggests, "How about 3.5 million? Jin-hyuk replies, "For 0.5 million and I won't sell it for less." They continue negotiating, until suddenly someone calls the boss, telling him there's trouble. A monster has appeared. Jin-hyuk wonders, "A monster here?" and imagines that perhaps it was attracted by the bodies of the goblins he put down. He asks what kind of monster it is, and the assistant replies that 2 orcs have appeared. Jin-hyuk thinks that the orcs are too powerful for him at the moment and that the situation is terrible. He quickly collects the bodies of the goblins, but it's past time to flee, as a large orc appears in front of him. The chief, desperate, shouts, "Aren't you an adventurer? Do something." Suddenly, the orc lunges at Jin-hyuk and he thinks he's going to die a pathetic death. But, unexpectedly, his staff comes out of his inventory and blocks the attack. Both the boss and the assistant are shocked, and Jin-hyuk realizes that the staff has automatically protected him. He thinks that this might be the staff's detect presence effect. "If this works in combat, maybe I have a chance," he thinks. The orc doesn't give up and attacks again. This time, Jin-hyuk gathers his courage and hits the orc's knee, causing damage. After that, he continues to hit the orc, thinking that he can now kill it. With another dry hit, the orc falls, and Jin-hyuk realizes that his weapon is much more incredible than he thought. He has managed to kill an orc and progressed from level 24 to 36 in one go. The boss warns him that there is another orc behind him, and thanks to the warning, Jin-hyuk manages to dodge in time. Thinking quickly, he attacks the orc from behind and says, "I'll make you join your little friend." With another blow to the orc's skull, he falls hard to the ground. Jin-hyuk evolves again, now from level 36 to 48. He can hardly believe that his enchanted weapon was able to take down 2 orcs. "I never imagined enchanted weapons could be stolen like this," he thinks. As the people around him murmur, the boss shouts, "Shut up!" Jin-hyuk turns to them and says, "Now that I've killed 2 orcs, how's the negotiation, huh?" In the next scene, at home and resting, Jin-hyuk looks at his bank account and thinks that he never imagined that the guys would pay 15% more than the market price. He wonders if he's dreaming. Now, the only thing he has to worry about is his next hunt, as money won't be an issue for a long time. He reflects that, after the day he killed the 2 orcs, Jun-chu, the black market boss, continued to do business with him. Jun probably realized that Jin-hyuk wasn't just a low-level hunter, but someone capable of killing even orcs. However, Jin-hyuk realizes that to hunt higher-level monsters, his current equipment won't be enough, so he has an idea and quickly gets out of bed. "If I play my cards right, I can get a lot of items for free," he thinks. In the next scene, he appears carrying several cans of booze to the dwarf blacksmith. He wonders if it's all really made of orichalco aluminum to humans, but he's actually brought beer. Jin-hyuk offers the drink to the dwarf, who immediately spits it out and complains, "You call that beer? It looks like piss." Annoyed, the dwarf wonders if he should give Jin-hyuk something stronger. Thinking quickly, Jin-hyuk offers soju, a typical Korean alcoholic drink. The dwarf decides to give it another go. After taking a sip, he exclaims, "Now it does. This tastes like real alcohol." But the dwarf adds that something is still missing. He asks Jin-hyuk for something specific, and the protagonist wonders what it is. The dwarf, who is no fool, reveals that he wants mithril. In the next scene, we see Jin-hyuk thinking, trying to figure out where he's going to get mithril. He wanted the equipment for free, but now he's stuck with it. Jin-hyuk knows that mithril is a rare ore, but wonders what it has to do with soju. Determined, he decides that he will try to find mithril somewhere anyway. Jin-hyuk continues to explore the dungeon, and, when he reaches an area of the labyrinth, he notices that there is a large forest inside. The system then warns him that he has reached the 2nd floor of the dungeon, known as the Maze of Dogs and Skeletons. The system asks him if he wants to set up a quick teleport point there. Confused, Jin-hyuk wonders what this is, but decides to register the point. As soon as he does, a portal appears, and the system informs him that he can now transport himself between the 1st and 2nd floors. Jin-hyuk comments to himself that this feels like a game and it's quite convenient, because if things get complicated, he can simply run to the portal. Moving on, Jin-hyuk soon understands why the place is called the Skeleton Dog Maze. Every few moments, a dog jumps out at him, but he easily knocks them down with his enchanted baseball bat. By killing yet another dog, Jin-hyuk evolves from level 48 to 49 and thinks that these creatures are much weaker than the orcs, which means that they are all practically free experience points. Without much difficulty, he continues to face the dogs with his baseball bat. After a while, Jin-hyuk has killed all the dogs, progressing from level 49 to 74. He reflects on how fast the XP is coming to him, and estimates that the bodies he has obtained must be worth around 200 million won. Although the money is falling into his account, he remembers that damn dwarf who asked him for mithril. Soon, Jin-hyuk enters a suspicious area and finally comes across skeletons. Now it makes sense that the name of the place includes skeletons. However, he realizes that the skeletons aren't worth that much money and starts ripping their heads off as if he were playing baseball. However, he soon remembers that skeletons work even without heads and realizes that he needs to aim for the core to destroy them. Fragmenting the core with ease, he continues the battle. After a while, Jin-hyuk realizes that he has finally finished with all the skeletons and thinks that the dwarf was very lazy to have sent him to do this job instead of going himself. Just then, the system warns him that he has reached level 100 and that his class will be changed automatically, based on his recent actions. Jin-hyuk thinks he has evolved too quickly and expects his class to be something like warrior, but is shocked to see the result. Because he has killed a lot of undead recently, his new class is cleric. In the next scene, Jin-hyuk throws a bag of mithril in front of the dwarf. The dwarf, surprised, comments that he thought he had died and asks how it went there. Jin-hyuk, exhausted, replies that it was tiring. The dwarf, still joking, says he's exaggerating, but asks if that's all he found. Jin-hyuk secretly admits that he kept a little for himself, but says that yes, it was all he found. The dwarf comments that it's enough to get started and asks what kind of equipment Jin-hyuk wants now. He replies that he already has a weapon and might need some armor. The dwarf says that making armor will be simple. In the next scene, we see Jin-hyuk waking up at 8:30 in the evening, having slept for 6 hours. Now more rested, he decides to go back to the blacksmith to see if his armor is ready. When he arrives, the dwarf reveals an armor plate and comments that it will be enough. The dwarf wonders where Jin-hyuk has been all this time, since there aren't many places to go there. Jin-hyuk replies that he was just walking around. The dwarf then hands Jin-hyuk his new armor and explains that it has been made so that it can be hidden under his clothes. Jin-hyuk notes that it looks very thin and thinks it won't make much difference, but decides to give it a try. After putting on the mithril armor mesh, the dwarf immediately smashes his chest to test its resistance. Jin-hyuk tests his new mithril armor and sees that its unique effect is to reduce physical and magical damage by 50%. After being thrown away by the dwarf's blow without suffering a scratch, he realizes just how powerful the armor is. The dwarf explains that the fright was just a quick demonstration of the armor's resistance. Jin-hyuk, impressed, comments that normally a blow like that would have broken his ribs, but with the armor he didn't feel a thing. He thinks that the dwarf really is a pot of gold, and goes up to him to thank him immensely. The dwarf modestly replies that there is nothing to thank him for. Soon after, the dwarf hands Jin-hyuk a barrel, and he wonders what it is. In the next scene, we see Jin-hyuk drinking the contents of the barrel, and realizing that it is a high-quality liquor with an incredible aroma. He remembers the dwarf commenting that storing the soju in a barrel lined with mithril would make it taste much better. Jin-hyuk thinks this idea is crazy. How could a different barrel completely change the taste of the drink? But then he has a new idea. In the next scene, Jin-hyuk calls Jun-chu and says he has some new business to discuss. He mentions that he has kobold carcasses, as well as a special liquor. Jun-chu is curious. Liquor. The scene shifts to the Titan Guild's hunting grounds, where they are on a new subjugation mission to collect carcasses. Suddenly, someone rushes in and warns the deputy master that there's a problem. The lizard men are being summoned again, in much greater numbers than last time. The deputy master suspects that this may be an anomaly in the portal. With 3 times as many lizard men, the situation becomes critical, but he refuses to call in reinforcements, as this would divide up the experience and the carcasses, damaging his reputation. He orders the team to stay focused and prepare for combat. In the next scene, we see Jin-hyuk at the Adventurers Association, where a woman congratulates him on his promotion, mentioning that the cleric class is quite rare. Jin-hyuk still can't believe he's become a cleric. Suddenly, someone comes running in, asking if there is a cleric nearby. Jin-hyuk replies that he's just become one, although it's only Class C, and the person says that's fine. Jin-hyuk thinks the rumors are true. Just working as a cleric brings many opportunities. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, a raging battle between the Titan Guild and the Lizardmen is taking place. The guild was losing ground, and the adventurers were being defeated one by one. In the midst of the fighting, a lizard man tries to murder two adventurers, but another adventurer saves them in time. The battle continues fiercely, and the deputy master begins to think that the adventurers are useless. He decides to take matters into his own hands. When Jinhyuk arrives at the battle, the deputy master orders him only to heal the adventurers, as well as the other clerics. Jinhyuk realizes that the situation is dangerous, but if he is paid, he is willing to help. He begins to heal the wounded, and his healing is so powerful that it begins to turn the fight in the guild's favor. However, Jinhyuk turns to another cleric and comments that, even with all this healing, they will eventually have to call in another guild. The other cleric agrees. Jinhyuk thinks that, at this rate, all the members of the Titan Guild will be exterminated. Suddenly, his staff automatically defends a blow, and Jinhyuk wonders where that monster came from. He realizes that the monster is putting the clerics in danger. Determined to act, Jinhyuk warns everyone that this is an ambush and that they need to retreat. The adventurers are worried, but Jinhyuk, determined, promises to take care of the situation. One of the clerics, surprised, asks, "Aren't you a cleric? It's too dangerous." Jinhyuk replies that he doesn't have much choice, since most of the members of the Titan Guild are already practically dead. Jinhyuk confidently tells the clerics not to worry, as he is sure he can handle the situation. Despite being a little nervous, when he lands the first blow on one of the lizard men, he realizes that it's not as difficult as he thought. With ease, he sinks his staff into the skull of another lizard man. However, he notices that some enemies are ignoring him and going after the clerics. Jinhyuk thinks he shouldn't have let this happen, but resolves the situation quickly, taking down yet another lizard man with one clean blow. One of the lizard men tries to attack him, but the mithril armor blocks the attack. Jinhyuk realizes that the monster's surprise attack has failed and comments on the power of his equipment, before smashing another enemy's head in. The surrounding clerics are impressed and comment that, thanks to Jinhyuk, they can concentrate entirely on healing the wounded. One of them, worried, asks what they will do if more lizard men appear. Suddenly, someone arrives on the battlefield, cutting one of the lizard men in half. It was Sang-ho, the leader of the Titan Guild. Sang-ho approaches Jinhyuk and asks if he is the one who has taken care of the lizard men so far. Jinhyuk says yes, but doesn't know who he is. One of the clerics explains that he is Sang-ho, an S-rank hunter and the leader of the Titan Guild. Sang-ho comments that they can continue this conversation later and promises to reward Jinhyuk appropriately. Jinhyuk observes Sang-ho and thinks that, just by looking at him, you can tell the difference in power between them. Sang-ho is like a monster of strength. Sang-ho enters the middle of the battle, implacable, and praises the guild members for their good work. The vice master, on the other hand, wonders who called in the reinforcements. He discovers that it was one of his subordinates, who thought it best to ask for help. Sang-ho then orders the exhausted men to retreat, as he is now going to deal with the lizard men. Even with hesitation, the group obeys. Sang-ho goes on the attack, smashing the monsters to the ground with a single punch, and everyone is impressed by his skills. Even Jinhyuk thinks, that's extremely impressive. With Sang-ho's help, the subjugation mission is finally completed, and he orders everyone to collect the materials left behind by the monsters. Meanwhile, Sang-ho approaches the vice master, questioning how he thought he could handle the situation without asking for reinforcements. The vice master replies that he didn't want to compromise his reputation or that of the guild. Sang-ho, however, accuses him of only caring about his own ego, leaving everyone in danger because of it. The angry vice master tries to defend himself, saying that this is a very serious accusation. Before the discussion can continue, Sang-ho asks for the cleric's rewards to be delivered. He then tells the deputy master that they have been saved by the gong, but that they will have a serious talk when they return to the guild. After thanking the clerics for their good work, Sang-ho turns especially to Jinhyuk, praising his abilities. He says that Jinhyuk has single-handedly managed to kill several lizard men and invites him to join the Titan Guild. Jinhyuk, surprised, thanks him for the offer, but politely refuses, saying that he can't trust a guild with a vice master like that. The vice master, furious at the rejection, sets out to attack Jinhyuk, but is quickly blocked by Jinhyuk's enchanted staff, which hits him right in the stomach. In the next scene, we see the news that the vice master of the Titan Guild has been defeated by a C-rank hunter, and people wonder if Sang-ho will take any action after this incident. Some mention that the vice master will need to explain himself and that this could damage the guild's reputation. Sang-ho, however, clinks his cup firmly and says that it was the vice master himself who tarnished his reputation. He put new recruits in danger because of his ego and, above all, attacked a person who fought for the guild. Sang-ho, leader of the Titan Guild, says that he doesn't care about the vice master at the moment. He declares that, from now on, he's going to change things in the guild by dismissing the meeting. While reflecting on Jin-hyuk, Sang-ho realizes that he is not just an ordinary C-rank adventurer, but someone very powerful, and decides that he needs to recruit him. In the next scene, Jin-hyuk looks at his bank account again and thinks that although he has made a lot of money, he has also spent a lot. He regrets a little that he didn't take an extra payment earlier, but it doesn't matter as he has other methods of earning money. Back on the second floor of the dungeon, Jin-hyuk reflects that hunting ordinary monsters isn't enough for his evolution now that he's stronger. It's time to find more powerful prey. As he crosses the catacombs of the skeletons, he hears a monster approaching and soon realizes that it is an orc, which is trying to attack him from behind. Jin-hyuk reacts quickly, throwing the orc back to where it came from. He comments to himself that, finally, several orcs have appeared at the same time, which means he won't have to worry about money anymore. Determined, Jin-hyuk advances, eliminating one by one, and realizes that he can kill 20 orcs without any problems now. He continues to explore deeper into the dungeon and, as he descends a staircase, he thinks the place looks like an abandoned temple. The system tells him that he has reached the third floor, the Temple of the Labyrinth Guardian, and he registers another teleport point. Jin-hyuk notes that, so far, there are no monsters, but he speaks too soon. Suddenly, a giant hand emerges from the ground and a creature made of earth appears. Even though he blocks the attack, Jin-hyuk is thrown away, wondering what kind of powerful and skillful creature this is. Jin-hyuk soon realizes that it is a golem, a creature artificially created from stone. He quickly dodges its attacks, noticing that, although they are powerful, golems are not very intelligent. Taking advantage of a loophole, he rips off a piece of the creature's stone body and, without difficulty, fragments the golem. However, to his surprise, the golem begins to regenerate and completely reassembles itself. Jin-hyuk, frustrated, remembers that golems only die if the core is destroyed. While he is thinking of a new strategy, another golem appears and grabs his feet. Before Jin-hyuk can react, an arrow hits the golem's chest, which explodes instantly. Jin-hyuk remembers that the core of a golem is in its chest and quickly breaks the core of the second golem. He wonders who fired the arrow that saved his life, suspecting that perhaps the dwarf had come down there. However, when he looks at the person who helped him, he realizes that it was a woman, and from her pointed ears, he deduces that she is an elf. Jin-hyuk thanks her for her help, but the woman grabs him by the collar and starts questioning him. She asks why he hasn't seen her before in the dungeon, where he came from, and comments that his clothes are strange, asking if he is also trapped in the dungeon. Jin-hyuk, confused, replies that he entered the dungeon that very day. The woman is surprised and asks if he knows where the entrance is. Jin-hyuk replies that he does, and she relievedly throws him to the ground, exclaiming that he's finally going to find a way out. Jin-hyuk, irritated, gets up and asks what she's talking about, but the woman insists that he take her to the entrance, as she wants to get out of there. While reflecting on the orders he is receiving, Jin-hyuk realizes that the woman is very beautiful. She then reveals that she is a platinum rank mercenary and that he can trust her. Jin-hyuk, surprised, asks, "Platinum rank?" The woman introduces herself as Lucia, a half-elf, and asks if he's heard of her, but Jin-hyuk says no. Lucia is disappointed and comments that she thought she was more famous. She shows her mercenary badge, but Jin-hyuk doesn't recognize it, which makes her suspect that he must have come from a rural area. Jin-hyuk replies that he's from Korea and has never heard of elves living there. Lucia then begins to wonder if a crazy wizard's spell really worked, crossing dimensions with the dungeon. She asks again if that was really Jin-hyuk's first day in the dungeon. He explains that he's been in several times, which confirms Lucia's suspicions. Lucia explains that it seems the wizard managed to perform the spell, and that this dungeon came from another dimension. Jin-hyuk is shocked to learn that it is possible for a dungeon to have cross dimensions. Lucia summarizes that if the reversal magic works, the dungeon could return to its original location. Jin-hyuk thinks that if this happens while he is inside, it will be a big problem. Jin-hyuk asks Lucia if her goal is to return the dungeon to its original dimension, and she replies that it's very difficult at the moment. However, she knows the potential location to accomplish this. Lucia mentions that there is a hidden room on that floor, and asks if Jin-hyuk could help her defeat the boss of the area, so that they can find the room. She promises a good reward at the end, in addition to what the boss can drop. Jin-hyuk thinks the conditions aren't bad and agrees to help her. In the next scene, Jin-hyuk is facing yet another orc, while Lucia jumps into an acrobatic position and drives a dagger into another orc's head. Jin-hyuk finishes off one more with his staff and, with all the enemies dead, he reflects on how powerful Lucia is. She also comments that he is much stronger than she expected. Jin-hyuk, however, thinks that he would be at a disadvantage if they continued like this, in case she decided to turn against him. But, out loud, he says that those monsters were no big deal and they continue advancing. As they walk, Jin-hyuk asks if there's much further to go, and Lucia replies that they're halfway there. He then suggests a break, saying he's hungry, and takes the opportunity to grab a cereal bar. Lucia only drinks water, but he offers her a bar. She asks, "Your name is Jin Ryuk, right?" Jin-hyuk confirms, but comments that it's still strange to speak informally to someone older. At that moment, Lucia points her bow at Jin-hyuk's head and says that age doesn't matter much to the elves, as she is considered young among them. Jin-hyuk, embarrassed, replies that he doesn't mean she's old. Lucia refuses the bar at first, but after a while she starts eating voraciously and even asks for more. Jin-hyuk, surprised, says that it was the last one. Lucia, satisfied, comments that she's never liked a flavor so much before, and says that now she's full, ready to continue the mission. Finally, they reach the boss room. Jin-hyuk comments that he only came for the reward, while Lucia seems to be investigating something. She mentions that that wizard's magic might still be active here. Jin-hyuk begins to regret having helped, but Lucia reassures him that the boss is already on his way. She says that since there are no smaller monsters to interfere, she can handle the boss on her own. Jin-hyuk, surprised, asks, "Are you sure? That boss looks incredibly strong." But Lucia replies confidently, saying that she's very good. Lucia asks Jin-hyuk to take a good look and says, "That's what we call an aura." Jin-hyuk is shocked to see her glowing arrows hit the boss in the hinges of his armor, causing him to fall. Impressed, Jin-hyuk comments that it was incredible, and asks if she could teach him how to use aura. Lucia promises to teach him, but first they need to finish the boss. Jin-hyuk agrees and, trying to hit the core, thrusts his staff into the boss's chest, but feels that it has hit nothing. As the boss prepares to counterattack, Jin-hyuk uses a sacred shield to protect himself, and Lucia looks on curiously, asking, "Isn't that aura?" Jin-hyuk, confused, quickly dodges the boss's attacks and thinks that if one blow isn't enough, he'll keep attacking until he succeeds. With one final blow, he sinks the boss's armor, turning it into pieces. With this, Jin-hyuk evolves from level 150 to 185. After the fight, Jin-hyuk asks Lucia if she can now teach him how to use aura. She replies in surprise, "What do you mean? What you just used wasn't aura." Confused, Jin-hyuk asks, "I used aura?" Lucia explains that since he is a cleric, his holy power manifests itself as a form of aura. Jin-hyuk wonders if he is already able to use this power. Lucia replies that it depends on the technique, and she begins to teach him, but on one condition. In the next scene, in the city, we see Sang-ho, the leader of the Titan Guild, walking with his secretary. They discuss a detected anomaly, an extremely powerful monster that appeared 5 days ago and has still not been defeated. The secretary comments on the danger of the creature, and Sang-ho thoughtfully wonders how powerful it could be. The Titan Guild alone will not be able to deal with the threat, but the secretary informs them that the other guilds are busy with other matters, leaving only the Titan to face the challenge. While Sang-ho reflects on the situation, the secretary comments that she is looking for hunters competent enough to deal with the threat. Just then, Sang-ho spots Jin-hyuk in the street, carrying a box full of chocolates. He crosses the street and tells his secretary to come back, as he has something important to deal with. The secretary, somewhat frustrated, thinks that he always does what he wants when he wants. Jin-hyuk is carrying the box of chocolates, thinking that it's enough to satisfy Lucia's condition. Sang-ho approaches him and, curious, asks why he's buying so many sweets, taking the opportunity to ask if he's thought about joining the guild. Jin-hyuk replies that he is still thinking about it, but that he would like to make his position clear. He is not interested in joining the guild. Sang-ho, however, offers a different proposal, suggesting that Jin-hyuk join as a mercenary, receiving a substantial reward. This piques Jin-hyuk's interest, and he says he'll think about it. In the next scene, Lucia is devouring chocolates and comments on how delicious they are. Jin-hyuk thinks that perhaps this kind of food doesn't exist in her world. After eating all the sweets, Lucia feels completely satisfied, and Jin-hyuk asks her why they are there, in that dirty, dark place, now that they have defeated the monsters. Lucia points to the symbol engraved on the ceiling, and Jin-hyuk comments that it looks strange. Lucia explains that it's a magic circle and is surprised that Jinhyuk doesn't know what it is. She then explains that the magic circle connects the dungeon to the world in which he lives and that she needs some time to study it. She warns Jinhyuk that if he really wants to learn how to use aura, he'll have to bring more chocolates. He accepts the condition, and then Lucia grabs his arm and begins to infuse him with aura. She explains that to use aura, you need a lot of focus, and she's going to make him feel the flow and sensation of the aura, infusing it into his body so that he can reproduce it later. An intense glow envelopes them both, and Jinhyuk feels something coursing through his veins, a power that seems to reach his soul. Lucia is impressed, realizing that Jinhyuk has more talent than she imagined. The movement of divine power flowing through his body in the form of an aura is impressive, and she thinks he can learn to use the aura in a single day. Meanwhile, Jinhyuk is confused, wondering whether he has really learned or not. Lucia approaches him and asks if he remembers the sensation of the energy flow, and he says yes. He then asks Lucia why she is leaving, since she said she would investigate the magic circle. She replies that she will need more time to deal with it, and that Jinhyuk will probably master the aura before the circle is resolved. Lucia says that training to master aura involves practice, and in the next scene we see Jinhyuk fighting goblins and kobolds. After defeating them, he asks Lucia why she made him kill so many random monsters, since she promised to teach him aura. Lucia explains that although she has infused him with mana, the rest is up to him. Combat is the best way to instigate the body to feel and activate the aura. Jinhyuk complains that she could have warned him earlier, but soon another golem emerges from the ground and tries to attack him. Lucia comments that in life and death situations, people concentrate more and instructs Jinhyuk to focus his divine power to activate the aura, just as he did with the sacred shield earlier. Jinhyuk, trying to follow the instructions, uses the sacred shield to defend himself, but keeps wondering what exactly he should feel. Suddenly, he notices a different flow and feels an external energy entering his left hand, the same one he used to activate the skill. He realizes that this is the right way to use divine power. Jinhyuk tries again, concentrating on the flow of energy, but the shield he creates comes out strange and, to his surprise, the golem easily breaks it. Lucia warns him that he can't make this kind of mistake in combat, but Jinhyuk, frustrated, replies that he's trying to do exactly what she said, but it's proving very difficult. Suddenly, the system alerts Jinhyuk that he has acquired a new skill called Divine Energy Application, Level 1. Now, he can use his divine power at will, but only on specific skills, with the skill's current level being F. This means that he can imbue any skill or attack with divine power. Jinhyuk gets excited, realizing that this is the method to get new skills without changing class. Lucia observes and comments that facing a golem while learning to use aura is too much for anyone, but Jinhyuk insists that he will deal with the golem. As he dodges the attacks, he thinks he needs to focus, replicating the feeling he had earlier by channeling the mana into the staff. With an acrobatic move, he hits the golem's head with a precise blow, breaking its legs. Jinhyuk realizes that he still needs more focus, but finally manages to use the divine aura to enhance his attacks. He then pierces the golem's chest with force, destroying its core and defeating the creature. Lucia, impressed, thinks that Jinhyuk has already mastered the aura. He rests for a moment, exhausted, and comments that he has finally succeeded. He reflects that, just as Lucia said, he has used divine power to create new abilities, including the precise blow that destroyed the golem. While Jinhyuk rests, Lucia praises him, saying that he did very well. Jinhyuk replies that he thinks he's getting the hang of it, but Lucia, in thought, recognizes that he has much more talent than he imagined. Jinhyuk notices that Lucia is reflecting and asks if everything is all right. She confirms, but thinks that she has only taught him the basics and he has already managed to learn 3 new passive skills and 1 active skill, which allows him to use aura in combat. Lucia, impatient, asks if he has had enough rest, and Jinhyuk, startled, sees that she is aiming an arrow in his direction. She fires, but the arrow wasn't meant for him. It hits a wall behind, opening a hole from which some creatures come out. Lucia warns him that, since the training has begun, he must go all the way. A battalion of orcs appears, and Jinhyuk jokes that Lucia is worse than a demon, even if she is an elf. But, prepared, he reveals that he has brought spare mana potions, determined to continue to the end. In the next scene, Jinhyuk is at home talking to Junchu while drinking a Coke. He's exhausted, looking like he's just come out of a war, and comments that he's worked too hard. Junchu, concerned, asks if he's okay and then agrees to a deal. He'll buy the bodies of kobolds, goblins, and orcs. In addition, Jun-Chu mentions the success of the liquor that Jin-Hyuk delivered earlier. Jin-Hyuk is already in a store in the next scene, satisfied, commenting that since he started selling the liqueur as traditional artisanal soju, the orders haven't stopped coming in. He tells Jun-Chu that if he can speed up the process, it'll be great, because with this popularity, he'll never have to worry about money again. Jin-Hyuk buys soju for 2,000 and sells it for 15,000, reflecting on capitalism. He comments that the heavier the wallet, the lighter the heart, and with so much money, all worries seem to disappear. However, in the next scene, we see Jin-Hyuk completely exhausted, lying in bed, saying that this last battle was very difficult and that he would like to sleep for days. He reflects on his conversation with Lucia and realizes that she is from a completely different world. The famous skills he knows don't exist in her world. Instead of using keywords as he does, Lucia only uses mana to activate her abilities. People in her world can't use skills as easily as humans on Earth, but they do have the ability to make a skill useful for various things. Jin-Hyuk, still exhausted from the last training session, is reflecting that if he uses his new power correctly, he can become even stronger, but soon collapses from sleep. Suddenly, he wakes up to a disaster alert echoing through the streets, warning that this is not a test and that all citizens should evacuate immediately. Confused, he picks up his cell phone and wonders what day it is, realizing that it is the day of the monster invasion. He comments that the invasion happened earlier than he expected, but still tired, he lies down on his bed again, thinking that the larger guilds and the association should take care of it. Before he goes back to sleep, he receives an important notification. The rewards for defeating monsters will be multiplied by 3. This completely changes his mindset. Excited, he summons his staff and aura, ready to fight. As Jin-Hyuk advances onto the battlefield, the secretary of the Titan Guild observes him from afar. She recognizes that he has good accomplishments, but is still unsure about his abilities. However, she hopes that he is as good as the guild master imagines. In the next scene, Jin-Hyuk is exchanging blows with an orc, breaking his staff in the middle of the fight. About to finish it off, he thinks about how incredible his training with Lucia was. He activates his aura again and hits the orc hard in the head, knocking it out. The Titan members nearby are impressed, asking who that man is. Jin-Hyuk reflects that, as expected, the technique he learned from Lucia allows him to defeat these monsters with ease. Taking advantage of the opening that Jin-Hyuk has created, the other guild members begin to eliminate the smaller monsters. Some Titan hunters suggest that Jin-Hyuk should be at least A rank, and he reflects that the rumors are not wrong. Thanks to his training, he is much stronger than the average A rank hunter. As he takes a mana potion, he remembers that he is now level 200, and with his mana and skills, he can continue fighting at the level of an A rank with ease. In his inventory, he has 100 mana potions, which means that these monsters are basically moneybags for him. Meanwhile, the former deputy master of the Titan is finishing off an orc when he notices that the monsters are dwindling. He hears rumors that someone very powerful is killing all the monsters and reorganizes his team, ordering them to move on. He sees Jin-Hyuk and remembers the man who left him in the mud. Filled with rage, the former vice master tries to attack him from behind, but Jin-Hyuk easily defends the blow and unceremoniously throws him away, thinking he's just in the way. In the next scene, the leader of the Titan, Sang-ho, is in trouble, his mana almost depleted, and a huge minotaur is trying to kill him. Jin-Hyuk appears at the last moment, grabs the minotaur by the horn and brings it down with a single hand. Sang-ho, relieved, thanks Jin-Hyuk for showing up, recognizing that he, an adventurer who recently reached rank C, took down the minotaur with ease. He concludes that his judgment was correct about Jin-Hyuk. Jin-Hyuk says that he was a little off for a moment, but now everything is under control. Sang-ho comments that the last remaining enemy is the minotaur, and Jin-Hyuk, without hesitation, finishes the monster off. The system tells him that he has leveled up after defeating the minotaur. In the next scene, Sang-ho thanks Jin-Hyuk for his help, explaining that it was his secretary who contacted him, as well as the fact that the rewards are multiplied. He again offers Jin-Hyuk a chance to join the Titan Guild, saying that many such opportunities will arise if he is part of the guild and assuring him that he will be well rewarded. Jin-Hyuk replies that he'll think about it, but only after he's dealt with the monsters in the other areas. Sang-ho comments that Jin-Hyuk is not easy to convince. Suddenly, Sang-ho's communication is interrupted, and he is informed that something terrible has just happened. The secretary reports that a gigantic monster has been detected in the clouds, blocking out the sunlight. Jin-Hyuk, looking up at the sky, wonders why it seems to be about to rain, when a huge bolt of lightning strikes the monsters. Sang-ho demands an urgent explanation, and the secretary reveals that there is a colossal monster hiding in the clouds, a giant flying whale, which is casting lightning bolts over the city. The scene ends with the whale striking a bolt of lightning directly at Sang-ho, who manages to dodge it at the last second. After defeating the Minotaur, Jin-hyuk talks to Sang-ho, who asks him if he's okay. Jin-hyuk says yes and asks what kind of monster that is in the clouds. Sang-ho confesses that he's never seen a flying creature that size before, and they both agree that they need to find a way to kill it quickly. In the next scene, the Titan Guild is facing the creature's lightning bolts, which explode vehicles and cause chaos in the streets. The lightning rods are useless against the powerful bolts launched by the monster. Sang-ho discusses with his team methods of attacking the creature in the skies. They've already tried using drones, but anything flying that comes close to the creature is shot down with lightning precision. The creature attacks everything within a radius of 1 kilometer. Sang-ho knows that they need to intercept it before more areas are affected, and Jin-hyuk comments that this is a serious problem, considering the size and distance of the creature. He then remembers Lucia, his ally, and suggests calling her to help. In the next scene, there is a meeting at the Titan Guild. One of the executives questions whether it's really a good idea to rely on a C-rank cleric, since even the most experienced people haven't found a solution yet. Another member mentions that the leader's ability has a range of 300 meters, but the creature strikes with precision at anything within a radius of 1 kilometer, making it extremely dangerous to approach. The secretary suggests that they call in reinforcements from the Jia Guild, made up of A-rank mages. However, Sang-ho rejects the idea, saying that the Jia mages are more interested in capturing creatures than protecting the city, and their only hope is to follow Jin-hyuk's advice. In the next scene, at Jin-hyuk's house, he manages to bring Lucia out of the portal and thanks her for agreeing to help. Lucia replies that she had nothing better to do, but reminds Jin-hyuk that he promised to fill her with sweets as a reward. She eagerly licks her lips at the mention of sweets. Lucia comments on the polluted air, complaining that she seems to lose a year of her life every time she breathes. Jin-hyuk explains that he lives there for lack of choice. He then asks how she plans to take down the gigantic creature, and Lucia replies that she could hit it with her eyes closed, but Jin-hyuk is more concerned with whether she can kill the monster. They identify the creature as a level 300 Leviathan, the highest level monster recorded in history. Lucia assures them that they can defeat it, but warns them that they will need help, as the building they are in is too fragile to withstand the impact of its attacks. Jin-hyuk then calls Sang-ho and asks if there would be any problems if the monster fell on some buildings. Sang-ho replies that the important thing is to kill the creature, no matter what the collateral damage. Jin-hyuk warns Lucia that they have carte blanche to knock down whatever is necessary. Lucia, now confident, invokes her magical aura and prepares herself. Jin-hyuk also activates his divine aura to hold the building and prevent it from collapsing with the attack. Lucia concentrates her power into an extremely powerful arrow and fires. The recoil of the shot is so strong that Jin-hyuk can barely hold himself up, while everyone watches in amazement as the arrow flies rapidly towards the Leviathan. In a matter of seconds, the gigantic creature is defeated, and everyone is amazed at Lucia's precision and power. Sang-ho comments, impressed, that Jin-hyuk never fails to surprise everyone in the guild. After the attack, Jin-hyuk jokes that it wasn't time to hold back, and Lucia replies that that monster was weak and couldn't take even 2 arrows. Jin-hyuk praises Lucia's power, but she, keeping her posture, reminds him that they have a contract. As part of the agreement, she throws an item to Jin-hyuk and says she wants it back as soon as the monster is dead. Jin-hyuk hands the power meter to the leader of the Titan Guild and explains that he used 240 strength points to take down the creature. The guild's previous record was 173, which leaves everyone impressed. The secretary confirms that the power meter is extremely accurate and there is no possibility of error. The executive, who had doubted it before, is taken aback and asks why Jin-hyuk is still there, suggesting that he should wait for the compensation and reward. Jin-hyuk calmly replies that he has an agreement with leader Sang-ho and that his share is the reward for the monster's carcass. Sang-ho agrees and says that Jin-hyuk deserves the reward, but the executive gets angry, saying that the carcass of such a valuable monster shouldn't be given to a C-rank. He even suggests that the Titan Guild would never give so much money to a low-level hunter. Sang-ho interrupts, asking the executive to stop talking so much nonsense, saying that the guild has enough money and that greed is what tarnishes its reputation. The executive, embarrassed, apologizes and agrees to continue the discussion at another time. Sang-ho apologizes to Jin-hyuk for his subordinate's attitude and assures him that the promise will be kept, including the reward for the carcass. He expresses his desire to fight alongside Jin-hyuk again in the future. Jin-hyuk reflects on how difficult it is to trust the guilds, but recognizes that Sang-ho seems to be someone who can be trusted. He replies that he also hopes to meet Sang-ho again someday. Meanwhile, the frustrated executive watches from afar and thinks that the leader is ignoring the guild's interests. He concludes that he will need to prepare an alternative for the guild's future, as he believes it is going down the drain under Sang-ho's leadership. Rumors are starting to spread among the guilds about a mysterious Titan hunter who took down the giant creature with just one arrow. Many people comment that it was a C rank who accomplished the feat, which leaves everyone shocked. At the Allron Guild, the members discuss the rumors, and one of the leaders comments that a C rank hunter managed to defeat the monster, while A rank hunters were hospitalized after the confrontation. He deduces that this C rank probably has a secret class, since these classes are extremely rare, representing only 0.1% of hunters. One of Allron's members comments that his guild already has 3 hunters with secret classes, but they can't allow another such talent to escape. They decide that they must either recruit Jin-hyuk or eliminate him. Meanwhile, Jin-hyuk, after a long sleep, wakes up and wonders how long he has slept. He is surprised to realize that he has slept all day and comments that he looks dead tired. His first action on waking is to ask for food, but when he comes out of his room, he finds Lucia devouring all the food in the house. He asks what happened and Lucia replies that she ate it all in 2 days because it was delicious and the only food available. Jin-hyuk then asks why she hasn't gone back to the portal, and Lucia explains that she can't go back. She was there, waiting while he slept, and comments that the air in that world is bad for her. Jin-hyuk tries to show her that the portal is there and says that she just has to go through it, but when Lucia tries to open the door, there's nothing. Surprised, Jin-hyuk realizes that something is wrong, because the portal should be there. Lucia asks if Jin-hyuk doesn't know what's going on, and he replies that he doesn't, because when he first saw the portal it was already open. It seems that now both Jin-hyuk and Lucia are trapped in the dimensional coordinates that the wizard has created, and the situation becomes even more complicated. Jin-hyuk, after realizing that the dungeon's coordinates are fixed on him, asks Lucia, "So, you mean the dungeon just fell on my head?" Lucia confirms, saying that he was very lucky that the spell failed, and Jin-hyuk comments that it seems he spent all his luck on it. But more importantly, he wonders why the food he ordered hasn't arrived yet. In the next scene, the motorcycle courier finally delivers the food, but comments that something strange has happened. He drove around the area several times and simply couldn't find Jin-hyuk's house. Jin-hyuk offers Lucia to eat too, and she asks if it's sweet. He says no, but that it's tasty. While they're eating, Lucia reveals that she put a reconnaissance suppression spell on the house because some strange people, apparently from a guild called Ultron, knocked on the door earlier. Jin-hyuk wonders why such a large guild would be after him. While Lucia enjoys her food, Jin-hyuk is preoccupied, fiddling with his cell phone, watching various news stories and videos about him, the famous hunter who brought down Leviathan. Lucia asks what's wrong, and Jin-hyuk replies that the problem is that he's gotten too strong too fast. She doesn't understand how this could be a problem, and Jin-hyuk explains that the unwanted attention and fame he attracted wasn't what he wanted. The hunter industry is extremely competitive and territorial, and he has now become the target of larger guilds. Despite this, Jin-hyuk concludes that he has no regrets, as defeating Leviathan was worth it. He then warns Lucia that as soon as she has finished eating, they will return to the dungeon. Jin-hyuk knows that the only way to deal with the guilds who want him out of the picture is to evolve further. With Leviathan's body, he plans to create even more powerful items. In the next scene, Jin-hyuk is in the dwarf's workshop. The dwarf comments that it's been a long time since he's seen such a big Leviathan, and Jin-hyuk admits that the body is a bit damaged. Lucia, unabashed, says that the Leviathan was weak and couldn't even take 2 arrows. The dwarf, out of patience, says that the elves don't understand how precious that body is, and Lucia, not understanding, asks what he said, starting an argument between the dwarf and the elf. In the midst of the confusion, Jin-hyuk tries to calm things down and asks if the dwarf can do something with the body. The dwarf then reveals that the creature was still partially alive and, with a great electrical impulse, extracts the Leviathan's most precious organ, the organ responsible for generating lightning. He explains that if Jin-hyuk were to enchant his orichalco staff with this organ, it could also shoot lightning. Jin-hyuk, excited, asks how much this will cost, but the dwarf replies that he doesn't need payment. He just asks Jin-hyuk to get the elf out of there, because with her present, the enchantment won't work. Lucia, furious, tries to attack the dwarf with her bow, and Jin-hyuk intervenes, asking her to stop. He tries to convince her that the dwarf is a good person, but Lucia replies sarcastically, "Good person my ass." In the next scene, Jin-hyuk is back, bringing more sweets to please Lucia. Suddenly, he senses a strange presence, something unusual in the air. He quickly realizes that he is being followed and orders the pursuer to stop hiding and come out soon. After a moment of silence, an assassin appears, saying that he didn't expect Jin-hyuk to be able to detect his presence. Very impressive for a C rank. The assassin tries a quick attack, but Jin-hyuk blocks the blow with ease. Surprised, the assassin comments that it seems the rumors are true, as Jin-hyuk doesn't have the power of an ordinary C-rank hunter. Jin-hyuk, with no patience for mystery, demands to know who he is and why he was chasing him. The assassin, however, thinks that a hand-to-hand confrontation is not the best strategy and that he will need to change tactics to deal with Jin-hyuk. The assassin uses his invisibility ability to try to attack Jin-hyuk, but despite not being able to see his enemy, Jin-hyuk can still sense his presence, blocking his blows, even though he is off guard. With each attack, the assassin disappears and reappears, making the fight more difficult. Jin-hyuk realizes that, without his main staff, the fight would be much easier. He had to leave his staff with the dwarf for the incantation, which put him at a disadvantage. Thinking of a strategy, Jin-hyuk decides to get out of there to buy time, but the killer follows him, commenting that Jin-hyuk has made a smart move by running away, but that eventually he will find him alone. With a tracker on his cell phone, the killer tracks Jin-hyuk to a shopping mall, convinced that he is hiding somewhere secluded, like the bathroom. Using his camouflage, the killer enters the restroom, kicking open the stall doors to try to find Jin-hyuk. When he kicks one of the booths, he only finds the tracker, but Jin-hyuk comes up right behind him with a makeshift baton. Jin-hyuk warns him that, in a tight space like that, it didn't matter if the assassin was invisible. The assassin tries to dodge, but Jin-hyuk continues his attacks, grabbing his opponent's wrist and throwing him to the ground with ease. Showing mercy, Jin-hyuk asked why the assassin was chasing him, threatening to smash his head in if he didn't speak. Suddenly, a father entered the bathroom with his son, as the other bathroom was being serviced. The child, on seeing the scene, is shocked to see Jin-hyuk with a stick, about to hit the murderer. Jin-hyuk gently asks the child to leave, saying that it was dangerous. However, the killer takes advantage of the distraction and casts a fire spell in Prota's direction, oblivious to the child in the way. Jin-hyuk, realizing the danger, quickly uses his holy shield to protect the child. The magic generates a lot of smoke and the fire alarm is triggered, causing the people in the mall to run in panic. The killer, frustrated by the situation, decides to flee, saying that his mission was to kill Jin-hyuk and take his items, but that everything went wrong. However, before he could escape, Jin-hyuk throws his baton, which passes through the assassin's body, killing him instantly. Jin-hyuk regrets killing the murderer, saying that he used too much force. It was the first person he had killed and, although it was self-defense, he feels bad. The system notifies him that Jin-hyuk's karma has been affected because of the murder, but due to the justifiable circumstances, he hasn't been given the title of villain. However, his cleric abilities have been corrupted, and he has fulfilled the requirements to unlock a new hidden class. Jin-hyuk is confused, reflecting on the fact that clerics normally receive severe punishments when they commit acts of villainy, but instead he has been given a new class. Later, still in the convenience store, he thinks about how this change will impact his abilities. Suddenly, a detective appears and asks for Jin-hyuk's cooperation. The detective confirms that the killer used magic in a dangerous place with a child involved and asks if the child is okay. The detective reports that the child only suffered minor burns, and that the child's father thanked Jin-hyuk very much for his intervention. Jin-hyuk, relieved, replies that he's just glad the child wasn't seriously hurt. The detective praises Jin-hyuk's quick reflexes, saying that his action was fundamental in saving the child in the situation. Jin-hyuk, after hearing from the detective that his situation would be considered self-defense, is surprised at how easy it is. The detective explains that, in addition to being self-defense, the law applies differently to hunters. What's more, Jin-hyuk hasn't been given the title of villain, which is a point in his favor. Intrigued, Jin-hyuk asks how the detective knows this, but the officer clarifies that the title of villain only appears when someone kills intentionally, which was not the case with Jin-hyuk. The detective then asks Jin-hyuk to keep this a secret, as divulging information about the title villain could complicate his situation. Jin-hyuk promises not to tell anyone. However, the detective informs him that, according to protocol, he will have to carry a monitoring device. This device will alert the police if Jin-hyuk says 3 specific words: self-defense, murder, and villain. As long as he avoids using these words in inappropriate situations and doesn't reveal what happened, nothing will happen. With that, Jin-hyuk is released to return home. The detective's assistant comments that Jin-hyuk doesn't seem to be a simple C rank, to which the detective replies that for someone to protect a child from such powerful fire magic, he must have very strong magic. However, the detective concludes that all this should remain a rumor, as Jin-hyuk is a special person and he hopes that he won't become a problem in the future. When he gets home, Jin-hyuk is informed by the system that his new class is called Inquisitor. He is surprised, as he didn't expect to get this class so soon. Without wasting any time, he heads back to the dungeon to test out his new skills. The first skill that replaces his healing is Steel Skin, which reduces the damage he receives and increases his resistance to poison, numbness, and stun. He realizes that his skills have been transformed, keeping the essence of the previous ones, but with something extra. Now, instead of using the Divine Aura, Jin-hyuk uses the Fighting Spirit, which manifests his combat power. Divine Shield has been replaced by Defensive Advance, a skill that makes him invest against his enemies while gaining more defense. Jin-hyuk recognizes that, with these new skills, he has a more complete set with high resistance and offensive abilities. He then tests the Discernment skill, which allows him to analyze the karma of his enemies by displaying numerical values above their heads. Using the skill on himself, Jin-hyuk sees that he has 64 karma points. He also discovers a new skill called Judgment, which increases his stats based on the enemy's karma. If he faces enemies with high karma, he will receive bonuses to his stats, ranging from 20% to 100%, depending on the opponent's karma level. What's more, if you kill an enemy with more than 200 karma points, they won't receive the title of villain, and the penalty will be absolved. Jin-hyuk gets excited, realizing that this ability makes him stronger when facing evil enemies. In the next scene, he picks up his staff from the dwarf, which is now capable of shooting lightning. The staff can store 3 charges of lightning, and they recharge every 30 minutes. Impressed, Jin-hyuk decides to test the staff on a trapped kobold. At first, he wonders if he needs to recite a spell, but the dwarf explains that no one has time for that in combat and that it's enough to imagine the lightning. Jin-hyuk concentrates, imagines an electric sphere and, to his surprise, manages to fire the beam. He is thrilled with the result, finding the incantation simple and effective. Jin-hyuk, after using the power of the enchanted staff and seeing the kobold turn to dust, is satisfied with the result. The dwarf, with a smile on his face, also appreciates the weapon's effectiveness. Jin-hyuk reflects that it will be much easier to fight with this new power. At that moment, Lucia, noticing something strange, asks why he is no longer emanating divine power and also comments on the suspicious item he is carrying. She is suspicious of his intentions, but Jin-hyuk quickly explains the whole situation. After hearing the explanation, Lucia asks if he really was involved in a murder and how his divine power changed. The dwarf suggests that the details can be explained later, saying that it's best to resolve the issue of the monitoring device first. Jin-hyuk agrees, believing that the dwarf can solve the problem. However, the dwarf asks for a favor in return, and Jin-hyuk readily accepts, saying that he will do whatever is necessary. The dwarf hands Jin-hyuk a compass and instructs him to use it to find a rare ore, which involves a dangerous journey. Lucia, worried, asks if he's really going to send Jin-hyuk to such a risky place, but the dwarf insists that even though Jin-hyuk is a novice, he's powerful enough to handle the mission. In the next scene, Jin-hyuk is climbing down ropes into a chain of floating mountains. He questions why the dwarf needs enro found only in that cursed place. Lucia, always confident, teases him, asking if he's afraid of a simple cliff. With agility, she performs an acrobatic move and descends gracefully, making Jin-hyuk even more insecure. He thinks that perhaps the fear is just a mental construct and throws himself off, successfully making it down. As they descend, they discuss what happened to Jin-hyuk's divine power and the transformation into his new ability. Lucia asks if he is really comfortable leaving the device in the hands of the dwarf, and Jin-hyuk replies that he trusts the blacksmith. The conversation then turns to the subject of karma, and Jin-hyuk reveals that he can see people's karma levels. Lucia, curious, asks what her karma level is. Jin-hyuk replies that her karma is 82, the highest among them, his being 64 and the dwarf's 72. Lucia explains that, due to her difficult life, she has had to do many questionable things to survive, which justifies her high karma level. Jin-hyuk doesn't see a problem with this, as the difference between them isn't very great. However, Lucia points out that he still doesn't know whether 20 points of difference is too much or too little, indicating that he still needs to better understand what karma really means. Lucia then shares that, in her world, there were saints who could judge people based on karma, determining whether they were good or bad, but Jinhyuk quickly distances himself from this title of saint. They end the conversation and Lucia encourages him to focus on the search for the ore. She is also intrigued by Jinhyuk's ability to discern karma and suggests that, once they leave the dungeon, he will be able to better understand how this ability works. Finally, Lucia offers to protect him if he gets worried about being attacked, showing that, despite her provocations, she still cares about his safety. Jinhyuk, however, is already more determined to move on and find out more about his new powers and abilities. The protagonist reflects on what he should do. He feels bad for the dwarf, but at the same time wants to find out what his ability can do. He says it's fine. After all, staying in the dungeon won't help them much. They decide to leave, although the protagonist still feels a little bad for the blacksmith. Finally, he uses his return stone, mentioning that he needs to take care of this matter first. A portal materializes next to them, and they both disappear, which causes his karma to increase. In the next scene, in the city, the protagonist asks, "Hey Lucia, you really use your camouflage magic well, don't you?" She replies that everything is fine and that everything that needs to be hidden is hidden. However, we notice that she's wearing a very nice outfit, although her magic doesn't seem to be working well, since everyone in the street is looking at them. Lucia, without realizing her mistake, says that it must be because of her beauty and then asks them to stop chatting, because they need to recap what they know so far about this karma thing. The protagonist explains, "Karma increases when you do something bad. For example, my karma went up because I broke my promise to the dwarf. Hurting or killing someone also increases karma. However, if it's something consensual, karma doesn't go up. I don't know exactly what is considered high or low, but apparently from 200 karma, you are already seen as a villain. I know this because if you kill someone with more than 200 karma, you don't get a penalty. It's considered self-defense." They continue the discussion, mentioning that they're fine, since their karma hasn't even reached 100. However, finding someone with karma over 200 won't be easy. Observing people on the street, the protagonist realizes that no one he has seen has more than 50 karma. So Jinru suggests, maybe we should go to a place where bad people gather. Lucia, intrigued, asked, "So you mean this place looks like this at night? In my world, it's not common to see monsters walking around at night." She comments that the city's air is polluted, but, surprisingly, this seems to be an advantage. The protagonist jokes, "My world has to have something good about it too, right?" Suddenly, a barman appears, praising Lucia's beauty and mentioning that there's an event going on at the bar where pretty girls get free drinks. Lucia, annoyed, pushes the man away, but the protagonist jokes, "For free? Let's have a drink." The doorman insists, saying that he will give good service, and the protagonist realizes that they are in the right place, as the doorman has 300 karma points. While they are drinking, the bartender watches the protagonist take a drink that he has poisoned. Soon, the waiter signals to other men in the bar, who begin to approach to attack them. They approach the protagonist, claiming that they are going to deal with him first, but thanks to his ability to resist, the system warns him that the poison has been neutralized. Without hesitation, the protagonist punches one of the men so hard that he throws him across the bar. He then hits another with a kick to the face. Lucia, poisoned and a little dazed, tries to pull herself together. When she finally wakes up, she asks, "Who are those guys?" The protagonist replies, "Who do you think? They're evil guys." Desperate, the waiter tries to use his last trump card, a fast and skillful man, who sets off towards the protagonist. Lucia even offers to help Jinhyuk, but he replies that he's fine. The enemy is annoyed that the protagonist is ignoring him, but the protagonist simply takes the man's hand with ease. The enemy, surprised, begins to wonder if Jinhyuk has always been a hunter. The protagonist comments, "It looks like you're a hunter too, but why are you hunting people instead of monsters? You look more like a gangster." The enemy thinks that having someone like the protagonist around is a bad thing, but he doesn't have time to react as the protagonist twists his wrist and, taking advantage of the fact that he's screaming, throws a punch that knocks him out for good. After knocking everyone down, all that's left is the barman. The protagonist grabs him by the neck and says he has a very important question to ask, but first he slaps him a few times, just because the barman was rude. With the man's face already swollen, the protagonist asks him directly, "Who's telling you to do this kind of thing?" The bartender, confused, asks, "Sending what?" The protagonist replies, "You, all unprepared, haven't been caught yet. There's something behind this. Who is the group of gangsters that was with you? It's not possible for you to do this alone, without an organization behind you. This is your last chance to talk." The barman, completely beaten up, says he's telling the truth, that there's no one behind it. The protagonist thinks, either this guy is very loyal or whoever is controlling him is much scarier. With no other choice, the protagonist decides to be a little rougher. He grabs the bartender's leg, who is in despair, and says, "I'll help you find the motivation to talk, you know?" Just then, Lucia appears and says to Jinhyuk, "You need to calm down. You're complicating everything." She then casts a spell that resembles a powder or smoke. The bartender starts to smell it and is suddenly completely out of it. He starts talking nonsense, asking if the protagonist and Lucia are from Ultron and if they're late for something. The protagonist, confused, asks, "What did you do to him? What did you just do?" Lucia replies that she just made it easier for him to talk. However, it seems they didn't get much useful information. The barman mentions that the Titan Guild is going to crush them, even if they are Ultron. The protagonist thinks the situation is getting more serious than he imagined, and asks, "What makes you think you'd be able to escape a massacre?" The barman, afraid, replies, "The elixir of Elan." The protagonist is surprised. Elan's elixir? What's that? In the next scene, we see that the street is agitated by the arrival of the police, who have begun to investigate. Lucia comments that this is getting much bigger than she expected. The protagonist agrees, saying that he never thought he would be involved with such a large guild. They discover that the elixir of Elan is a substance that can double a person's status, but producing it requires the sacrifices of several young women. The protagonist is incredulous that a guild would do something so cruel, and Lucia says she's just as shocked as he is. She reveals that, in her world, this type of drug exists, but under the name Queen's Tear. She tells him that a close friend of hers was sacrificed to create this elixir, and that years later, as a platinum-ranked mercenary, she personally destroyed that organization. The protagonist comments, "So that's what gave you that tough guy look, is it?" Lucia, intrigued, asks, "What are you going to do now that you know this?" The protagonist replies that the elixir is almost ready, so the people who are making it will rush to complete it. "We're gonna finish these suckers off before that happens." The scene ends with someone in the bar talking on the phone. "We've got a problem. Someone has discovered our plans. A strange person came through here and killed everyone." The voice on the phone, desperate, orders, "Find this person immediately." It all starts when the head of the Titan Guild says that he will resolve the situation quickly. Meanwhile, on a Titan Guild trip abroad, we see the secretary commenting that the trip to Hong Kong is a success. If performance continues like this, they'll be able to hire 15% more members. However, as she looks at her boss, she notices that he doesn't look very well and asks what's going on. He then asks the secretary if she's ever heard of the elixir of Elan, to which she replies that no, she's never heard of it. The boss comments that the association has had problems with it recently. Out of curiosity, he asks her if it would be very difficult for her to return to Korea now. The secretary replies that it wouldn't be too difficult, but that her task hasn't been completed yet. She asks what exactly is going on, and the boss says that there is no other choice, asking her to send an urgent order to the guild immediately. The guild master then declares that, from that moment on, the Titan Guild will have hostile relations with the Tyrant Guild, which surprises the secretary. She wonders why this sudden decision, but the guild master explains that, if the information they have is true, something big is about to happen. The secretary wonders what kind of information could cause such a stir, since this declaration of hostility is practically a declaration of war against the Toronto Guild. The boss replies that he is aware of this and assures her that the government will stand by them. However, the secretary warns that a war brings many risks and that they should consult the executives before making such a decision. The boss, with a serious expression, replies that he is serious, and the secretary realizes that he really is. Even so, she thinks the decision is too hasty. He, in turn, says that he understands that she is frightened, but asks her to make the statement and start the investigations, while the official announcement will be postponed for the time being. Soon after, the scene cuts to the protagonist and Lucia. Lucia asks the protagonist if he has received an answer from the person he trusts so much. He replies that he has, and that this person is the leader of the Titan Guild, who has already started investigating. Lucia comments that at least influential people are involved to help, since they have agreed to work with the protagonist. The protagonist then explains that, if they already know about the elixir of Elan, it was an expected reaction. He suggests that it's time they went back to the dungeon, but Lucia replies, "And miss all the fun?" She goes on to say that if there are people involved in this, they are of a high caliber, and that he won't be able to deal with everyone on his own. The protagonist admits that she's right, and Lucia asks, "So, will you let me help you? We can clean up this mess together." The protagonist accepts and thanks her for her help. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door, asking if he's home. The protagonist is surprised, as he wasn't expecting anyone, but apparently it's a package. However, we discover that this was a plan by an assassin who was tracking the protagonist. The enemy checks on the radar that the protagonist is not far away and starts jumping through buildings until he finds his house. When he arrives, he notices that the house seems to be hidden in some way, as if it were blurred. He also recognizes that this is the house of the guy who captured that new monster recently. This means that the C-ranked kid on the news is the same person who was at the scene of the crime, but it doesn't really matter to him. He just wants to do his job. Before opening the door, the protagonist asks who it is, and the person replies that it's a delivery, albeit a little late. Jin-hyuk is suspicious, thinking that it wouldn't make sense for a package to arrive at that time, and besides, how would the delivery person know where he lives if the house is under a suppression spell? It's definitely a trap. When he opens the door, the killer tries to attack him, but the protagonist blocks the blow and comments sarcastically, "Since when do delivery boys carry poison darts these days?" The assassin, surprised, realizes that the attack has been blocked, but Lucia wastes no time in shouting for Jin-hyuk to get out of the way. Lucia shoots an arrow into the killer's chest with such force that he is thrown away, crossing the street and getting stuck in the building on the other side. She says she'll end it once and for all, but the protagonist interrupts her, saying no, because the man is probably there because of what happened in the bar. Lucia warns him to be careful, because if the killer survives an arrow from her, he's someone dangerous. The assassin, stunned, wonders who that woman is and how she managed to fire such a powerful arrow. He decides it's time to retreat and runs. Lucia asks the protagonist if he's going to chase the man, but he says no, because the killer will probably appear again. He also comments that the killer's karma was over 900, which means that he is a cold person who kills without remorse. The protagonist sees this as something positive, since he can use this situation to his advantage during the cleanup. In the next scene, we see that, at dawn the next day, they are in a car. The driver tells them that they have arrived at the site of the official investigation. Apparently, the protagonist has been taken there by order of the master of the Titan Guild. The driver also mentions that there are people in the Titan Guild who don't like the protagonist, so he should be careful. The protagonist reflects that at least half of the hunters present are Hanner, an elite group. However, he also realizes that the man who hates him, and with whom he has already fought, is leading the mission, which indicates that he will have a lot of problems this time.